Hi everyone, welcome to our ongoing series on how to create a life operating system in Notion. Today's going to be a fun one. We're going to be looking at the content creation pipeline. And I'll get into how I break this out and lay this out in great detail. But before we dive into it, I just want to say this is not only an example of how to do a content creation pipeline, but it's really an example of how to do any kind of special routine operational projects that are too small to be full projects in your projects database, and too specialized and routine with too many of them to put into that projects database, but are more than tasks and kind of live in their own world. They have their own needs in terms of database tags. They have their own needs in terms of templates and workspace areas. And this is not only an example of how to create a content production pipeline, this is also an example of how to create any sort of specialty pipeline or any specialty mini project series that happens on a regular basis, but is more than a task and less than a project. And so there are many potential applications of this across business or personal use. If you're an artist of any type, not just media creation, certain types of client production, you might have certain elements that you have to produce through various stages. They're too frequent to be classified as projects, or it would just balloon your whole projects database. And again, they have their own needs in terms of database tags and workspace areas and templates. So this creates a very clean look into that unique operational pipeline, especially when there's a high volume of them. So it's not only an example of how to do media creation on a regular basis, but how to do any kind of specialty pipeline. So you can think of it more broadly if content creation isn't what you need, but you have other types of routine operations in place. But I will say this is also highly connected to my task database. So everything going through the content production pipeline is linked through a relation to my tasks database, but they're not actually in the tasks database. They're in their own specialty pipeline database, which I call the content production pipeline. So as usual, starting from our command center, under business, this is a central element to my business operations. So the content production machine dashboard is listed here at the bottom of the business column. I click into that and we're in my content production machine. You could alternately call this a content creation dashboard or whatever you want, but I call it a content production machine because it's designed to do very high volumes of content production across different mediums, written text, video production, audio. In my case, it could be anything. It could be painting. It could be poetry, anything you create. It doesn't even have to be artistic. It could be marketing materials. It could be website development if you're a web developer. It could be a wide range of things, anything that has a pipeline of creation of any sort. And in fact, could be broader than creation. So think of this as a specialty pipeline database. In the navigation system on the side, the content production machine is under dashboards, because this is a dashboard. And then the database itself, which we'll see many views of in this dashboard, is under pipelines. So that's the production pipeline right there. So the production pipeline here is the name of the database. The content production machine is the name of the dashboard. The content production machine dashboard pulls entirely from the production pipeline database. It's the only database it looks at, and almost everything in it is a different view or a different slice from that database. There are a few exceptions up here, which I'll show you, which are some scratchpad lists just for quick idea generation and note-taking. But once we get into the meat of it, it's all about the production pipeline database. I should also note, this is one of the templates I have in my template packet. So if you want a template for this, it's available. Just go to the link in the show notes below, and it's part of the packet that you access when you subscribe to the newsletter. It's a slightly simplified version, but it's very similar. I think I just have 2 instead of 4 of these scratch pads, but you could always add more. The rest of it is all in there, including the production pipeline database is embedded in the template with the dashboard. So this is pretty much available to you if you want to duplicate it as a template. So first of all, these 4 areas up here are quick scratch pads. The most active one right now is the Notion series. The way I came up with the idea of this Notion series is I laid it all out. It's, as you know by now, it's designed to be a series. It's sequential, and it builds, each episode builds on the previous episode. So I really mapped it out episode by episode from the beginning. It was designed to be initially a 25 to 30 video series. It's definitely growing beyond that. So, and I've got ideas to go beyond that once the main course is laid out. But you'll see right here, these are the episodes we've been doing. and you'll see I've scratched them out as I've done them. So I'm still maintaining this list, even though all of these episodes flow through the database, which I'll show you in more detail. So after you get past 22, which was the monthly and quarterly reviews, we're now on 23, which is the one we're doing now, the content production pipeline. And then we have got some mapped out. I've got sort of an update coming in the next video. And then we get into the vaults, the book vault, the media vault, the knowledge lab vault, and then more. I'm not going to open up the glance too far ahead, but that gives you a little sneak peek of what's to come in the near future. But everything's mapped out. It does change. That's why I don't want to show it. It's just because I'm constantly changing it, inserting new ones, rearranging the order. But it's very easy to sort that out. And then over here, I've got different ideas. So I've got video ideas I'm creating for after the Notion series. And then I map out my newsletter series. My newsletters come out every 2 weeks, and they're very well structured to tell a story over time. And then blog articles and ideas. My blog's sort of on a pause right now until I launch the new website, which will be coming out very soon, hopefully in less than a month. And then my blog's going to come back to life and sort of be a parallel creation platform and outlet along with the video channel. So I just map these out as bullet points because it's quick and easy and I can play with it. It's a bit more flexible. But the database is also very flexible. That's just when I put it into the actual system. Now, here's how this works down here. We've got this first toggle is a list of content ideas. So it's labeled ideas. Then we get into in production, then next up, and then ready to post, it's done. And then my archive down here. So we'll come back to all that. So the first one is content ideas. So the status here, everything entered in the database has a status. And the status kind of lays out the whole system here. So the status sequence is from latest in the sequence to earlier. So ready to post is the end before it's actually published. Then post-production is the second to last stage. Production, writing, next up is next in line to go into production. Scheduled means it's got a date when it's planned to enter the system, but is not quite up to the next up level in terms of how close it is to entering the production process. Potential idea is a maybe, hasn't been decided, but anytime I have an idea of something that might be a good video or a good newsletter topic or a good blog article or whatever, or a good podcast, I'll enter it and label it as potential idea. And that's what this view is all about. This is filtered just for potential ideas. So I've got items that are labeled as potential idea, and then also idea generation resources, which are not individual ideas, but hubs of ideas. There are certain websites that have lots of ideas. And so I might list something as a source to go to look at and review to look for individual ideas. So in either case, they're all listed here, and this view is filtered just for potential ideas and idea generation resources. Now, don't get excited about what's over here because these were actually created before I started the Notion series. The whole concept of the channel has changed since then. Some of them might be relevant, but many of them are probably not. They're extremely dated and old. But I still left them in here because I need to go through them at some point once the Notion series is over and see which of these are relevant. But a lot of them are no longer relevant and not ones I intend to do. I just haven't gone through and cleaned it out. But anytime I have an idea, I'll throw it in here. And then periodically, once I'm ready to start a new section that isn't planned out as far ahead as my Notion series, I will delete the ones that are obviously no longer of interest, and I'll elevate and prioritize the ones that are of interest, especially coming soon. And once I decide to do it for sure, I'll either schedule it or queue it as the next up. If it's just a quick decision, like, yeah, this one I should do really soon, I'll label it as next up. And then I won't miss it when I look at what I've prioritized to come in to the pipeline soon. In other cases, I might schedule things further out, in which case I'll label it as scheduled. It's not going to happen in the near future, but I've given it a date to start, so it's queued up in the system and it gets a scheduled tag. But it's really helpful to capture ideas for content creation when you have them because it's so easy to forget. The ideas are fleeting and they disappear if you don't write them down. So I will open my phone and I'll throw it in here with a potential tag if it's just sort of a maybe, sort of, kind of idea. If it's an idea that that's a really good idea, I definitely want to do that soon, then I'll just give it a next up tag right away. If I have an idea and I am thinking, I want to do that this week, or I want to do that next week, I'll give it either a next up tag or a writing or production tag, depending whether there's a writing stage to it or not. So moving on, then the next view shows me just the items that are in production. And for me, production means it's either in the writing stage or it's in the production stage, which means it's ready to be shot on video or recorded on audio. Post-production means it has been recorded on either audio or video, or of course both, and is ready to be edited. And then once it's edited or written, if it's a piece of text, it's ready to post. That means it's completed. All of those show up here, but I don't actually use this one that often because the next one is really valuable. This is the Kanban board of this production pipeline. So you haven't seen a lot of Kanban boards in my system, mainly because when we're dealing with action items and things with due dates, the Kanban board doesn't work. You can't set it by due date. You have to set it by either a single select or multi-select. You also can't use formulas to sort the Kanban board. So it's only single selects and multi-selects, which means it requires a lot of manual manipulation. I prefer my action zone, my task management, to have the items flow in automatically. And the way you do that is by managing them by due date. So I don't use Kanban boards in my action zone because the due dates take over and bring a lot of automation. But in the production pipeline, it's really valuable to see where everything is at different stages. And it's easy enough to move them around. It's just like dragging cards forward and back. So here we see a view starting with earliest in the process to the right side is latest in the process. So scheduled means it's been given a date and it's going to come up, but it's not immediate. Next up means it has not started in the production system, but it is the next few that are going to enter the production system. Writing means it's in the writing stage. So the next thing that I'm going to write, even if I haven't gotten to it, it's the next thing I'm going to write. So it's queued up here and ready to be written, or it's something I've started and the writing is underway. So my next newsletter is queued up and ready in the writing stage. In the production stage, we have the video I'm recording right now, the content creation dashboard video, Notion video number 23, and the one after it, because I'm going to be doing that either today or tomorrow as well. You'll see the whole production schedule. But these two are in the production stage because I am ready to record these. And in one case, I am literally recording it as I speak. Then once they're recorded, they go to the post-production, which means editing needs to be done. So this here is the next Mind and Machine podcast YouTube video. And that has been recorded and it's ready for post-production. So it's in the post-production stage. Either it's ready to start post-production or it's in the middle of post-production. And if I'm working with editors, then this point, I will assign it to someone else, to one of my editors. And they'll be the owner of it, but it'll still sit here. So I'll see the overview of what is in each stage. Everything in post-production that an editor is working on will pile up here. So I'll know what's being worked on by others or what I need to get to post-produce or edit myself. And then once the editing is done, it's ready to post. So some things are not going to go through every stage. If it's an essay, like for the newsletter, it's going to hit the writing stage and then it's going to go to the ready to post. In this case, posting would mean sending to the mailing list, but it's not going to go into production, post-production. But if there's a video that has a script, then it'll go through the writing stage, then the production, then post-production, and ready to post. If it's a video like this one, where there's no script, I'm just sort of talking off the cuff, just free form, it won't go into the writing stage at all. It'll go from next up or scheduled straight into production, then post-production. So every piece of content does not go through every stage. It only goes through the relevant ones. But these are the major ones that the most important content I create goes through. Some go through writing, some go through production, some go through post-production. Everything goes through at least one, in many cases 2 or 3 of these stages. But everything will hit the ready to post stage at some point. And then at some point, everything will be published, in which case it moves out of ready to post into the published category here, which we'll see in a moment. Next up shows me just a list of those that are queued for next up. So it's the same ones we saw in this stage of the Kanban pipeline, but this is a way to just sort of view them and evaluate which sequence. Now, in this case, it's easy because it's my number 25, 26, and 27 videos of the series. Once I get past this very sequenced, very scheduled Notion series, and I'm doing things more spontaneously, even though they'll still relate to Notion for the channel, or perhaps for other channels or for my podcast, they won't be sequenced. And then this is valuable because I can sort of choose among the next up and see which ones I'm excited about doing sooner rather than later. So it's just nice to see the next up ones and choose among them. So then we go into the ready to post. And again, this is also in the production pipeline listed as ready to view. It's the last one. Sometimes they sort of build up. You have a bunch of them ready and you need to really sort them out. So it's nice to have their own view. This particular one in the ready to post category has been lingering a little bit because this is unusual, but this is the one I'm not posting. I created this video for Francesco's Keep Productive YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with it, it's a very big YouTube channel on productivity software. So I did a video on how I use Notion and Roam together. So that should be coming out this week. And that's in the ready to post, even though it's not up to me to post. So once he posts it, I will move it to the published status, but I can keep track of things that I'm doing for other channels. I often have opportunities to create videos or be a guest on other channels. I put those into my production pipeline too, because that's part of my whole content creation flow. It's nice because I never do the post-production on those. Sometimes they're live streams. They flow through a little faster with less work on my end, but I keep track of them because it's still work that I'm participating in putting out. And so I want to be part of this whole pipeline. And then ultimately, once it's published, it's extremely valuable to me to have this posted archive. This is the stuff that's been published everywhere. So everything that I've published on my channels, or I've been a guest on or a guest creator on for other channels, is here. And I have this incredible archive of everything I've ever created all in one place. This is filtered just by statuses published. There's the status here. So one of the last ones here is published. Once it goes through the whole pipeline of all these different stages, it is designated as published. And this view here filters just for that. And then it's sorted by the publishing date. So it's in sequence from newest at the top all the way down to the oldest. I have access to everything I've ever published. There's a URL here. So here's my last newsletter, which was the most recent thing that I published. I designate what channel it goes to. So YouTube, Medium, blog, LinkedIn. I haven't been doing much LinkedIn content, but I'm going to be doing a lot more in the future. So I've got a LinkedIn designation. Review, that is my newsletter platform. So that means it's been published and sent through the review newsletter system. Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and guest means it's not on any of my platforms. I was a guest on someone else's platform. So I designate it by one of those, and then type. So it's either Notion series, Mind a Machine, my podcast, and my other YouTube channel, newsletter, or More Time Per Day, which is my company, which has its own content, although less and less of that these days. And I'll be rebranding that very soon. So I'll be sharing that news with you once that rebrand relaunches. And then guest, again, if I'm a guest on someone else's platform. If I had new types of content I start creating, I would create a new tag for that. So those are the three things I enter for each. Then down here, when it's in production, I'll have a next action date. That is the date at which the next time I intend to take action on that piece of content. So whatever needs to be done next, I schedule the date that I'm going to do the next thing. I don't have a date assigned here for everything, though I do have shoot date and write and edit date. Honestly, I don't use that too much because it just gets too cumbersome to manage that. So I'll mainly just have a next action date, the next time I'm going to touch it and do something to help it move forward in the process. But these are filtered for completed. This has already been published, so it doesn't have a next action date. That comes off once it's published. But while it's in production, it always has a next action date. And there's an action item here. This is linked to my master task database. These are my action items. When I have it in production, when it's going through the writing stage, the production stage, the post-production stage, I will click here and I will link it to a specific item in my action items task database. And that will move in parallel. So this next action date will be the same as the due date, the DO date in my action item database. And the two will move in parallel. So it takes an extra step to link the two. And each time I change the due date or the next action date, I have to then change the date on the other. So that is one extra hassle, one extra step that has been introduced. But the benefit I get by taking that one extra step is I have this entire system that is mapping only the content flow. And since I do so much content, this clean view of every stage, this entire pipeline view that's uncluttered by other types of tasks, the clarity and transparency this brings to this one type of activity is so valuable. It's worth it to me to not actually have each of these be a task or a project, but to rather be linked with each next step of an item moving through the pipeline to be tagged and set with a relation to a task in my action items database. That additional hassle of maintaining that one link is worth it to have the clarity and comprehensive control over the whole production system. So that is where this becomes valuable. I'll revisit that in a moment, but let me finish showing what's happening here. So back to our example of what's in here, it will always have a publish date. Even if it changes, I will assign a publish date, and I'll show you why this is important when we get down to the calendar before. And I usually won't manipulate this much here. I'll manipulate this in the calendar. Notes if I have them. Once I publish something, I always enter the posted URL. And if there's a second URL, I'll enter that here. So in my archive here of all my published content, I have a link to every one of them. If there's a written version and a video version, I'll have both links, but if it's posted in just one place, I'll have the one link, but I can access it anywhere. And in addition to that, if there's written content, I'll include the written content in here. So it houses the material that was in written form. If it's a video, then I don't do it. I have a link to it here. And then finally, the owner is designated here. So if I hand off a stage of production to someone else, I will assign a different owner. So if one of my editors takes over to edit, I'll assign the editor when it goes into the editing stage. And so it'll pop up in their action zone. And that is my archives of all the work that I've created. Now, the best part is the calendar views. There are 2 of them. Let me just give you a quick glance. So first of all, we have the production pipeline next action calendar. Then under that, we have the publishing calendar. So this maps out by date every next action for every piece of content that's in the pipeline. And right now we see today's the 8th. It shows each day during this week, I'm creating 1 piece of content. So I'm a little behind on production on the Notion videos, as you guys who are following regularly know. I didn't get anything out last week, so now I'm putting in an extra effort to do a whole bunch quickly to get back on track. So every day this week, I'm recording 1 video. So today I'm recording the content creation. Tomorrow I'm recording this update video. Then I get into the vaults. We got the book vault, the media vault, the knowledge lab. And then on Saturday, I write the newsletter. Every other Saturday, I write the newsletter. Now I tend to plan my next dates out about 2 weeks. I will do the newsletter every 2 weeks. So I know I'm also going to be writing one here. I haven't mapped that one out. Usually when I finish one newsletter, I will schedule the next one. If anything were to not get done on the scheduled day, I would bump it to the next day when I had enough time to take action on it. So it's easy for things to move if I don't get them done. But here's where I map out what I'm doing each day to move forward everything in the pipeline. Then down here is my planned publishing calendar. The planned publishing calendar has the same items, but not the date I plan to take the next step. Instead, the date I intend to publish it publicly. So that's really where I start. I'll usually start with the publication date and then work backwards to figure out when I need to complete it by. So the same items. So today I'm working on Notion video number 23, content creation, and I'm hoping, my intention is to publish that tomorrow, Tuesday. Today's Monday. So we'll see if I make that. You guys will know better than I do right now whether I made that target, but if not, if I miss it, then I'll slide it to the next day, and I'm pretty confident I'll have it there by the latest. Then I'm hoping to get one out by Thursday or Friday. Francesco tells me he's planning to post the Keep Productive video I made for him on using Notion with Roam on Friday, so I expect that to come out then. So I've mapped that publication date. I'll be working on my newsletter on Saturday, and I intend to send it out first thing early Sunday morning. I always send it out every 2 weeks on a Sunday morning. And then I've scheduled tomorrow, I intend to record my book vault video, and then I'll release that the following Monday and get back on my Monday, Thursday schedule, which I was on so consistently for a while. And then you'll see here, though, last week, I missed the entire week. So I see when I got behind and I didn't deliver. I just had an intense week of client work. Client work just completely took over, which is a good problem to have. I'm certainly not complaining. I love working with my clients, but it did mean I missed all my intended video releases, so everything slid back a little bit. That's why we're here looking at releasing hopefully tomorrow. Now, I want to show you one more thing, because while I typically work on databases embedded in these powerful dashboards that I like to create, this particular database, I'll sometimes work in the database itself. If you click on the title here, you'll go from this embedded view of the database to the database itself. And there's a really big advantage to the database view, because you have the ability to see it scroll without flipping from month to month. So you'll notice here in the embedded view, it shows 1 month. This is just the month of June. You can look back to the previous month of May, and I can go forward to the current month of June. I can go forward to the month after. But if you get to the end and you are working between 2 different months, it's hard to see. Or sometimes you just want a bigger view of how things are laying out. You click on the database view, and here we scroll down till we get to today. This is the publishing calendar. So this is the date everything was published. I can see historically how everything was published. And again, it's organized by Notion series, newsletter, different things, podcast, guest appearance on Notion at Work with William Nutt. So that was fun. I'm doing another one of those in a few weeks. So it just lays out all the different published pieces that I've done, but it's one continuous stream. So certainly it's easier to work across the borders of different months, but also gives me just a much larger view of everything that's happening without just containing the view to a single month. So that can be helpful, especially with when you're laying out the publication calendar. If you're laying it out further than a week or two, it's really nice to see all of it in one view. Now we can also look here to a number of other views I have. I also have the next action calendar view. This one doesn't have any historicals, because once it's published, the next action date comes off. So there are no historical dates for next action, but it does let me lay out and see without breaking off at the end of the month what's coming up. I have a larger pipeline view here. So it's similar to the one we saw before, but it's bigger, and it shows me everything happening in the production pipeline. I have another view for the potential idea board and a master table, which is largely used just to do maintenance on the database. But I really love the calendar views here, especially the publishing calendar, to look at everything over time and how it also gives me a historical view on how consistent and how prolific I've been at creating. So back to my content production view, and you'll see it's one of my favorites. I have very few favorites, but the content production dashboard is one of my favorites because I'm in it so often, right after the client operations dashboard. So that's pretty much it. But this system is so powerful, it lets so much production flow. It can be used with a team or it can be used solo. With a team, it's even more powerful. I mean, the ability to assign different owners as it's going through the pipeline, where you as the business owner or the head of the operation can see everything at every stage of the production, is super powerful. If you needed to, you could add more stages if you had a more complex pipeline. Nothing wrong with that, but it gives you the same level of view. This is so scalable. I mean, this is a pretty extensive level of production I have going on now, but it can go so much bigger across much larger teams. You see a lot of content production boards out there, but they can't scale. This works well at a small scale. It's very simple. My template lets you get started. It's right there. This is already pre-built for you if you want to grab my template. Again, link below. But it also scales to a massive level of production across large teams. I've implemented this with clients who have huge teams in massive production flows, multiple pieces of content coming out every single day, sometimes 5, 6 a day, and all of it's tracked and monitored and very fluid. Now, in addition to that, the one other really exciting part of this is the templates. Now I've got a whole bunch of templates. I've got a template for my Notion series. I've got a template for my Mind and Machine podcast, one for my newsletter, one for video blog combination content. And each of these has their own sort of capability. So you go into one of these, I'll go into edit. And this is for the Notion series. So every time I have a Notion video like this underway, I will assign this template to it. It's got a quick link to my YouTube channel and to my blog. Initially, I was doing blog posts with all of these, but until my new website comes out, I'm not worrying about the blog part, but it's all right here. I've got the keywords here. This is here so I can scratch some ideas for titles. Titles are super important on YouTube and a lot of the platforms. They help the search engine on YouTube find your videos. So you got to really think for the right title. So sometimes I'll sketch out a few ideas, or if I know what it's going to be, I'll just write it out here from the outset. The episode links. So I can basically collect all the links in one place that are going to go into the show notes on the video. The video description here is ready to write out, so I can start writing it out. And basically all the content that goes with the video under the show notes or access to the platforms where I need to post the video is all going to go right here. Action items here are listed. So these are actual action items. These are not content production items. This is my task database. It's listed here and filtered for just the items relevant to that particular piece of content, but showing the actual items in the action database. Now, sometimes there's just one action item and it's the next step. And sometimes it's a complex piece of content and will have many steps, in which case this becomes a lot more valuable. But it's all here and it shows me everything that needs to be done on it as it exists in the task database. And then finally, once it's posted, I have to do a certain amount of promotion. I've got links to Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, any of the channels that are relevant for this kind of content, and for Reddit. And that's all organized in one workspace. So with every single piece of content, whatever type it is, it's going to have all of its creation, text, show notes, and then task items from the task database, and then promotional links and promotional content, phrasing, wording for each post in Twitter, for example, or Reddit. That's sort of largely pre-made or set up so that you can very easily tweak it for the specific episode. So I do that for each, the podcast, the newsletter, the video blog, whatever you have, just have a separate template for each and have it optimized for that type of content. And that's it. That content machine dashboard and the content pipeline database will let you produce as much content as you can think of, as much as you and your team are capable of creating. It can scale to any level, or it's very functional and not overwhelming at a very simple level with just one person doing an occasional piece of content. So this video is also an important marker in the whole ongoing series here. So we just finished with this video, a long section on pipelines. Pipelines are part of the pillars, pipelines and vaults, organizational and system design approach. Pipelines are all about actions moving through various stages to get things done. Then this wraps up a several week period in which we are looking at a wide range of pipelines in the system. We've really covered all the major pipelines. So now we're going to move beyond pipelines, and next we're going to look at vaults. Vaults are where knowledge management happens. This is where learning happens and knowledge is aggregated and accumulated, and you get insights and you build resources that are super valuable in many instances very long term. That's where idea generation is facilitated and made possible. That's what we're moving into next. So that's going to be a really fun and very important part of the system. I'll probably do a quick update video because I've been doing a few tweaks to enhance the system. So the next video is likely to be an update video. And then after that, we'll get into the Vault series and get deep into knowledge management. At that point, I'm going to do my overview on the pillars, pipelines, and Vault system. But having gone deep into each component, it's going to make a lot more sense, and I'm going to be able to talk more comprehensively, and you're going to know what I'm talking about because we have explained each of the components. So that's why I saved the pillars, pipelines, and Vaults overview to do after we've talked in some detail about each of the components. So that's going to be an exciting point at which we bring a lot of things together. So that's coming up right after the Vault section. So lots of big stuff to come, and then I've got some really cool ideas where we go after that. If this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos, leave thoughts or questions below, and hit like if you found this valuable. I also write a newsletter called Mind and Machine on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates, including the one for the content machine, to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work super hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is below in the show notes. Thank you for watching. Lots more to come.